Welcome to Offscreen. This week we're reading Untitled Sociopath Project by Topher Rhys-Lawrence. A successful New Yorker's seemingly perfect life starts unraveling once he's suspected for the murder of his coworker, and his only alibi is a doppelganger that's begun stalking him. So this script appeared on the 2015 Blacklist. I think it had received about 10 votes.
I just thought it was an intriguing logline, so that's why I picked it.
Right. It seems to be his first project in development as a screenwriter. He has a few credits to his name as an assistant, and it seems as though he works for Atlas Entertainment, which is actually also the company that is producing this.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nice. That's the goal, I guess, isn't it? Get your foot in the door and then find someone who wants to help you.
Yeah, right. Parlay those relationships. Yeah, so we don't really know too much about him aside from that. He's pretty young. He has Instagram. You can follow him on Twitter at Topher Rhys. Topher.
All right, well.
RHYS.
We don't need to, do PR for him.
Well, I don't know. Give him a shout out. Yeah, so, I don't know, this is pretty much a thriller. Kind of in the vein of American Psycho.
Oh, man, yeah. That was going to be my first thing. I think this owes a lot, tonally and even to a certain extent, plot-wise, to American Psycho.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
You want to get into the synopsis?
Yeah, I feel like I'm always qualifying my synopses by saying, this is really complicated and I don't know if I can cover everything.
No, I think it's a given. So.
Well, anyway, here we go.
You didn't feel bad.
30-something Reed McCarthy works as a high-profile publicist in New York, but he spends about as much time maintaining his own image as he does his clients'. He's gunning for a position as partner with the firm. That's why, when his main competition for the job is killed, Reed isn't exactly sad about it. In fact, he's soon suspected of committing the murder. On top of everything else, the firm hires a new guy to fill the vacancy, Sebastian, and he's a shoo-in for the partner position. It's about the same time that Reed has begun to notice a strange man following him around the city. Even stranger, he looks exactly like Reed. When the two of them finally confront each other, the doppelganger already has a plan. He'll provide an alibi while Reed kills Sebastian. In exchange, he wants to get with Reed's mistress, a girl named Nicolette, who he's been trying to break it off with before his fiancée finds out. It's a win-win. Sure enough, Reed murders Sebastian, only to find out later that his doppelganger was only a figment of his imagination. Turns out Reed is running from a rough past on the West Coast. His doppelganger was merely a manifestation of his old self, coming back to haunt him. Fortunately, Reed learns that Sebastian's murder, too, was just a hallucination. In his relief, he breaks it off with his mistress and reconciles with his fiancée. And they live happily ever after. Maybe.
We don't know.
Yeah.
But.
So what do you think?
I thought it was okay. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't really.
I thought the dialogue was pretty good.
The dialogue was pretty good, and there were some really insightful, kind of long rants that the characters went on.
Insightful rants?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't usually think of rants as being insightful. That's not to say that your 20-minute rant last week was not insightful about Deadpool. It was very observant.
Yeah. There was so much to say negative about Deadpool.
Yeah, that's in the past now.
It's in the past. Well,
just like this.
Having watched the trailer for Deadpool, it seems as though they at least addressed some of my concerns a little bit.
Yeah.
In that they have added a female superhero, and they give the love interest, I think her name was Vanessa, they give her at least a line of dialogue where she says that she's unaccustomed to being a damsel in distress. So whether or not the rest of the film...
That one line goes a long way for you, huh?
I mean, it's better than every time she's on screen, she's performing a sex act or she's in chains. So it is a nice departure from that. Yeah. But that's in the past.
Let's not open that whole can of worms again. But back to this one. Here's my biggest thing. Sebastian, he's like the new guy that's supposedly gonna take this partner position. He's looking like he's gonna beat out Reed, our main character, for this job. I think that is just one too many things. With Sebastian, there's like a whole storyline with him competing for this job, and Sebastian also kind of looks like Reed and behaves like Reed. So it's almost like another doppelganger situation, right?
Right, he's set up to be basically the same as Reed.
So you've got like
but
two...
a year younger.
Yeah, so you've got like two doppelgangers going on almost. And it's too much, I think.
Yeah, in a way, he's introduced kind of out of the blue. I think I think Reed's like tying his shoes, and Sebastian like sidles up next to him, alongside him.
They're in the bathroom, I think.
Yeah, and the introduction kind of plays in a hallucinatory way, kind of. But then the rest of the character becomes pretty literal, so that's disappointing.
Yeah. I was really surprised when he actually did kill Sebastian, or so we thought at the time.
Right, but by that point he was like
Soup's crazy.
Soup's crazy, yeah, and Sebastian had really been kind of pushing his buttons in a way, but it's really like the affront to Reed's narcissism that pushes him over the edge. Like right before he kills him, Sebastian flippantly mentions how, oh yeah, he has another one of these PR like trophies, and that they must just give them out to anyone who does a halfway decent job.
It was very appropriate that Reed used his own award to beat the guy to death.
Yeah,
Sebastian's own award. Okay, there was one thing that this script did that I thought was just unforgivable. They explain it later, but it made me so angry. When he first meets his doppelganger, like really up close, they like look at each other, they realize they even have like the same mole on like their ear or something like that, and then Reed has like a scar on his arm that he says he got when he was like hopping a fence at one point, and he like cut himself on a nail. The doppelganger has the same scar, which at that point, how is your first question not, okay, how did you get yours? And he didn't ask that, and they just moved on in the conversation, and it made me very angry.
Right.
That would freak me out. That would be
well, I mean,
too much.
Mole, I mean, it's all too much. I think.
It's all, really, the mole
like
too.
I think it's pretty clear from the get-go that they're the same person. It just doesn't make any sense for this guy to be stalking him and showing up in all these different places when, like, how could he actually know where Reed was in that moment?
Which also, this leads me to like a bigger point that I think is more important even. This is all supposed to be very like subjective, I feel like.
Yeah,
you're supposed to be in Reed's head, in his mindset. We're seeing these visions that he has. And yet, later in the script, once he's really starting to like lose it, he sees this. Is he like a psychologist or a therapist? I don't know.
Yeah. Dr. Norton.
Yeah, who I guess he's been seeing on and off for some time.
He's described as the longest relationship in his life.
Right. And he says, like, he has a line that it's happening again. And that's supposed to let us know, oh, this isn't the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's true, and this has happened to him before, I have two questions. First, why is he not already more wary of this? Why is he so prepared to believe that this doppelganger is real if this has happened to him before? And two, why weren't we privy to this if we're supposed to be in his head, in his mindset? Then that just ruins everything, I feel like. It doesn't work. I just think it shouldn't have happened before. I don't know why that detail was left in the script. I think it's just dumb. To
your first point, why isn't he more wary of this? I think it's because if you're like mentally ill, you're inside of it. You can't see outside of it. That's the whole illness of it. You can't recognize it because
I guess if you're in it, maybe.
But to your second point, that if you're gonna allude to the fact that it's happened before, I think the past trauma needs to be more specific and it needs to be more significant. Because we never really learn
what's so bad about his old life.
Yeah, or what specifically he's diagnosed with or what he's suffering from.
I don't necessarily need to know like what his condition is. I'm okay with someone just having a case of the crazies. But I guess what my beef is that if we're going to be in his head and in his mind space or whatever, if it's a subjective point of view, then you got to commit to that. And I don't like that they're holding back information about him that he knows about himself that's really vital to this situation.
Well, I don't know. Go ahead.
I think the path of least resistance would have been to just cut that whole mention of this happening before. This should have just been the first time.
Right.
That way, we are still on the same page as him. We're just as much in shock and like confused about this doppelganger.
I don't necessarily think that just because they're presenting us with things that are subjective to him, that we necessarily need to be privy to the entirety of his mind. I do agree, though, that it's pretty muddled, and because it kind of seems to be treading the line between, and not effectively, of like an allegory like American Psycho, where his craziness is like a cultural byproduct. Where when you are a banker or whatever, in the 1980s, like there's a sociopathy to that lifestyle, to that industry.
Yeah.
And they hinted that here, but at the same, with his like image obsessiveness.
Yeah, I thought some of that was
But at the same
pretty good.
time, they are trying to make this kind of a unique, specific mental illness to him, and that doesn't really jive, I don't think, with the more cultural allegory that they're.
I don't know. I think you could maybe have it both ways, but I do think it fell a little short in this one. No,
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying to reconcile or to make something stronger from the synthesis of those.
Yeah.
However you say that word. But
yeah,
I don't think it gets there. Is my problem.
I agree. I think he was trying to. Like, they mention a lot of stuff about social media and how a few things happened throughout the story because of some pictures he had on his computer. The girl that was murdered in the beginning, he was kind of like enemies with her because they were competing for this job, and he was gonna I guess he was on the verge of blackmailing her, basically. Had a bunch of photos of her that were not very...
naked selfies.
Yeah. Which, knowing Valerie, if you read this script, she was like really nasty and up in his
she's not
business.
really in the screenplay.
Well, you get just a few glimpses of her to know that she's like pretty...
You get it. You get those glimpses filtered through Reed's eyes, though, I think. We really only see Valerie in 3 scenes, I think.
I wanted to read the very first line that she has.
Yeah, go for it.
In exchange with Reed. They're just in the office, and she says to Reed, "Reed, those cups aren't compost, you colorblind cocksucker. They're recyclable." And Reed says, "You're the expert, Val. Your tits are last month's Tupperware."
Yeah.
That was great. That's how we were introduced to her. So yeah, I didn't like her. We're not supposed to like her. Well, she's fun. She's like love to hate kind of character, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, so she had some plastic surgery. Lots of people have.
Well, actually, the image stuff, also I wanted to say this, because I thought this was good. Maybe they didn't like carry it out to its full potential, but I liked all the stuff about how, they're publicists, they're all about image. He in particular is really concerned with his own image, and he's always checking himself in the mirror, and it's a very potent metaphorical thing for the doppelganger situation. It makes sense.
Right, yeah.
Like the whole mirror image thing.
Definitely. That's a good point. Though some of the shots, or some of the scenes that really play up his, I guess, narcissism or whatever, feel kind of pulled straight from American Psycho. Like when he's having sex with his fiancée, and he stops to check himself in the mirror. Check himself out in the mirror.
Right at the beginning of the script. And that was,
Right, that's a direct nod to Patrick Bateman. Another thing one thing that I thought was pretty great, though, really effective, was his obsession with getting verified, getting the blue check mark on Twitter.
Yeah.
And that kind of that like meaningless status thing really reminded me of the Patrick Bateman's obsession with his business cards.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought, while definitely inspired by that, it was different enough and updated for
Right, it's a
for
perfect
2015.
modern day
It's really
equivalent.
clever.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. Like, that's paid off later on too when Reed learns that Sebastian has a verified check mark on his Twitter.
Pissed.
And he's pissed off, yeah.
What do you have to do to get verified?
I mean, I don't know how many PR people are verified.
I'm not questioning that. That does seem a little dubious. I don't know. You'd have to be like...
I mean, I think you have to be of some note.
He represents like some big time celebrities, it seems like, or like up and coming celebrities.
Right.
So maybe, but I'm just curious what it takes to actually get verified on Twitter.
I don't know.
Do you think our Twitter will be verified someday?
Clearly, yeah. Yeah, we might have to sell out to a big podcasting network, but...
Worth it. Oh, speaking of Valerie, this is another thing that I found really frustrating at the end. So, I guess it was the doppelganger who somehow vouched for Reed at the end and managed to clear Reed's name of the murder.
Why do you say it's a doppelganger?
Valerie. I thought it was. Was it not?
I just don't think it says.
I thought somebody... I don't know.
Because...
somebody sort of did him a favor, I feel like, because one way or another they called Reed in for a lineup.
Right.
And
the eyewitness says that it isn't him.
It was Sebastian.
After he runs half a block away into Sebastian. So
right. So
kind of leads you to assume that Sebastian was the eyewitness, but then Reed directly asks him, and Sebastian says, "No, it wasn't me."
Whatever. It's just somebody did him a favor, and like he clears his name of the murder of Valerie at the very end, but then there's just a line where they're like, "Well, I guess we'll never know who killed her," and like that's just left hanging at the end of the script, and it's really weird to me. Like, that's kind of messed up. They pretty much more or less put a stop to the investigation. Like, I'm pretty sure they're just gonna call it. They're not really concerned anymore with who killed her, was my impression.
Or no, that they found someone else, that it was someone else in the lineup.
Well, if that was the case, they definitely should have said so. I wanted to know, like, who actually killed her. I just don't think they should have raised that point at the end at all.
Do you really think Valerie's murder is ever important to the story, aside from whether or not Reed killed her?
I mean, at this point, I still don't even know for sure if Reed killed her or not. He's crazy enough that he might have done it and just not known.
Right, clearly.
If he can think that he killed Sebastian and then he didn't actually, he could have easily killed Valerie and not known it. Yeah. Just the opposite.
Well, going back to who helped him out, Reed asks Sebastian, "You were the eyewitnesses?" Sebastian says, "Of course not. I'm too close to the crime. But you can forever thank me and the blonde that was once yours," implying that Nicolette, Reed's
his mistress,
ex-girlfriend, now current. Well, I don't know if they're really a mistress. She's really a mistress.
I don't know. I guess, what's the definition of mistress? Well, that was what I used.
It would imply that they're having sex, and it doesn't seem as though they're having sex.
That's true. I guess he says that he's kind of just like supporting her now. He's like feels obligated to support her.
The backstory there is that Reed and Nicolette dated for a while. Nicolette became pregnant, but they both had like drug problems, or she had drug problems at least.
Yeah.
He convinced her to get an abortion. She fell apart emotionally after that, and ever since he's like paid for her life.
Out of guilt, kind of.
Out of guilt.
There was this really juicy scene where Sebastian sets it up for Nicolette to meet his fiance, and then it all comes out. And his fiance's name is Tasha, and she breaks it off with Reed after she finds out about this. But there was this whole great conversation where Tasha, his fiance, sees Reed talking to her at the bar, and she's like, "Oh, who's this?" And Nicolette jumps right in and is like, "Oh, we're just old friends. He was helping me with some guy trouble." And she goes on to explain, and it's clear that she's actually talking about Reed. That scene was so
right. It was really, really effective, really dramatic. Yeah.
I don't know why Sebastian and Nicolette felt like they owed anything to Reed, though, to get his name cleared. Like, what did he really do for them?
Nothing, I don't know.
And the time before that, the last time that we saw Nicolette, she was, like, pissed at Reed. She was, like, taking a bunch of pills. She had just ransacked his apartment, and was gonna like blackmail him. I think about like she found out that he had this condition and that he was taking these pills.
I think because they've known each other for a long time.
Or maybe she always knew. I
Yeah, I
assumed
think
that
she
she had
always
just found
knew.
out, but she knew about his past life and everything, and she was gonna like I guess threaten him with that information. That was the last time we saw her, and the next time we saw her, she's helping clear his name for this murder. I don't know what switched.
I'm not sure. Do you think there's something interesting going on with like Sebastian and the doppelganger, and that the doppelganger wanted Nicolette or wanted like his past,
Right.
and at the end it's kind of implied that Sebastian and Nicolette are together. Do you
Oh,
think there's
I didn't
anything
think
to do
about
that?
that. I didn't
Anything
think
to
about
do with
that.
that? I think as like Reed's psychosis builds, maybe all of this stuff is like kind of meshing together.
Uh-huh.
Do you want a verdict? Give your verdict?
Verdict time?
Sure.
I'm gonna say
You want
what
me
am
to
I
go
gonna
first?
say? You always go first, don't you? I don't know how to go first.
I'll go first. Um, I'd probably pass on the screenplay and consider the writer. I think
Okay.
he's talented. I don't think that this is the one though.
Yeah, I guess I have to pass on the script. It's too much like American Psycho for it to be like important to me. Um, and it didn't really wrap up very well. It was kind of sloppy.
Yeah, I agree
Um,
with the ending, or agree about the ending.
I'm kind of on the fence about the writer too, really. Like I like the dialogue, but I get the feeling that this guy is only good at writing these kinds of voices for characters where in this case it's like all these upper class people being really snide and none of the other characters in this script exhibited really any kind of different voice to me. They all kind of had that same attitude. So I'm gonna maybe just for the sake of I'm gonna take a stand. I'm gonna pass on both. I did kind of enjoy the script, but yeah, it was a little too derivative and not super well executed, and I don't think this writer has a whole lot of other voices in him.
I mean, yeah, you're definitely correct in that all of the voices, all of the large voices
It's
in the
fun.
screenplay are very similar.
It's fun to hear them trash each other.
Yeah, but it's one voice.
But it's basically
articulated by 3 or 4 different characters.
Basically.
No, I can't quibble too much with that. It's not I don't know. I think something else that he writes could be good. So I want to believe that it's possible. But I'm not like adamant about it. I can definitely see where you're coming from.
Yeah. I think the reason I like doppelganger type stuff so much.
You do like doppelganger type stuff.
Well,
can we talk about that?
Although I didn't like that one Jesse Eisenberg movie. What was that called?
Wasn't it called The Double?
Yes, I think it was The Double.
Okay.
Didn't really like that. I think I just like the concept of it. Like it happens some in my own writing, and then also like I really love The Talented Mr. Ripley. I think that kind of sparked this whole thing for me.
Yeah.
It's not exactly a doppelganger situation, but it's like an assumed identity situation.
Do you think the fact that you have a twin
That's exactly what Cal said.
Psychoanalyze you?
My fiance said the same thing. I don't think so. He's not my twin brother is not identical.
Right.
But then is it like a longing for that? I don't know. Because like to be a non-identical twin, it's like defeating the whole purpose of being a twin, basically. It's like, oh, you're twins, but you're missing the one thing that's actually interesting about it. Don't get me wrong, I still liked being a twin. We had like all the same friends growing up.
You had some good twin times.
Well, that sounds really stupid. That sounds cheesy.
I know. It is alliterative.
Anyway, maybe there's something there.
This is a question that, one would have to ask.
Yeah, no, I get it. I'll ruminate on it. What are we reading next time?
First,
we should plug all our stuff.
Yeah, let's plug all of our stuff.
What about the Facebook? Are we allowed to?
We're plugging it.
Okay.
We're plugging it now. So, facebook.com/OS podcast. If you could like us there, and that would be amazing because we're going to have a lot of posts, a lot of content there, I think.
Are we?
Well, we're going to
this is more on you. It's your responsibility. So if you want to...
we're gonna
set that expectation.
Yeah, that's where we're gonna set the expectation. At the very least, there's gonna be links to all of our work.
Yeah.
And all of the
and
myriad platforms where you can find it.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're launching it this week. So facebook.com/OS podcast.
We're just, I guess, trying to be as accessible as possible. Some people don't have Facebook, so we're on Twitter. Some people don't have Twitter, but they have a Facebook.
What's our Twitter?
OS Podcast, just at OS Podcast. And we've got the website, ospodcast.com. We're on iTunes. We're all over the place. We're on YouTube. We're on SoundCloud. We're on... okay, that's it. But that's a lot of things.
I mean, that's a lot of things. I still think the best places to download us are iTunes and our website, right?
We just finally fixed our stupid iTunes problem. They're very difficult with the RSS feed, and like I had to tweak some of the like coding and stuff. So now I know that the new episodes had not been showing up on iTunes like forever. You would have to actually search for the podcast every time to find the episodes, but it's fixed now. So hopefully that helps make things easier.
Well, it's cool. We've gotten feedback on pretty much every platform now. We've gotten something on Twitter. We've gotten something on SoundCloud, YouTube.
Got an iTunes review.
Yeah, that's what we should plug. If you could write us an iTunes review, preferably, if you could write us an iTunes, let me start over. If you could write us an iTunes review, one that's preferably positive, that'd be amazing, because that looks really good for us. And
gotta get that on that feature page.
Yeah, like that's gonna help us grow the podcast and continue to make more of them.
Yeah. Okay, next week we are reading a script called Mute by Duncan Jones and Mike Johnson. I don't know if I should mention that Duncan Jones is David Bowie's son in this part or not, but there.
Well, we should definitely mention it, and that he's directed Source Code, Moon, and the upcoming Warcraft.
Okay, so now we're reading a script written by him and Mike Johnson called Mute. When his girlfriend goes missing, a mute bartender searches for clues in the seedy underbelly of a near-future Berlin.
The internet described it as Casablanca meets Blade Runner. So.
Ah, intriguing.